Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Labor Vision, where we bring the General Assembly to your living room. My name is James Parisi. Today we're pleased to have with us a representative who represents both an area of Providence as well as Johnston, Representative John Carnevale. John, thank you for joining us.
I'm honored, Jim. Thank you for having me today.
John is a retired Providence police officer. He has a degree from Roger Williams University. He's in his second term at the General Assembly. And John, you serve on both the House Finance Committee as well as the House Labor Committee, right?
That's correct, Jim.
All right. Before we talk about a couple of labor issues that I want to get into, why don't you just start by giving us a little bit of background? How did you first get involved in politics?
Well, my family's been involved in politics for many years. My father was always active in the community, and in the 60s and 70s he sat on the district committee, which at the time was the 12th district before redistricting. My brother himself became a state representative from the 12th district from 1976 until 1988. And myself, I've been on the district committee for the last 20 years. And when my brother left in '88, I was going to run for the position, but I was very busy with the police department. And a good friend of mine ran for it, former Representative Stephen Smith. And when Stephen decided to retire from the position 2 years ago, that was my opening, and I ran for the slot.
So this is your first elective office in Rhode Island, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Why'd you run? What kind of issues were you campaigning on when you went door to door as a candidate?
Basically, it was a law enforcement campaign. There was some needs of the neighborhood for new law enforcement and new strategies in law enforcement. And it was also the needs for the community, social services that we needed in our community that I didn't think we were getting enough of. Steve Smith had done a great job with it, but I kind of picked up where Steve left off on that issue. And also educational issues, funding for colleges, monies for school buses and whatnot, and for the educational systems.
And this is your first time that you're now serving on the House Finance Committee, right? That's
correct. This is my first year on the House Finance.
It's a real time commitment. You have quite a bit of work in front of you in terms of hearing different budget articles. How's that going to proceed in the next month or so?
We're very busy already. We're doing double sessions some days. We come in at 1 o'clock, we'll go 1 to 4, and then at the rise of the House, we'll go again. We'll be there till 7, 8 o'clock at night. But I'm sure it'll be more busy as time goes on.
Yeah, must be a real challenge for you to juggle two important committees, not only Finance, which handles the budget and a lot of bills, but Labor, which has not as many bills, but some pretty highly charged ones, if you will.
Yes, you're correct. I find myself bouncing back and forth at times from committee to committee, but they're all very important bills that come in the two committees.
Good. In a previous segment, we had Representative De Silva here talking about a couple of different issues. And one issue he talked about was biweekly pay. There is, for the private sector, a requirement that people get paid on a weekly basis. Some government workers and some nonprofits can get paid on a biweekly basis. And for years, the Chamber of Commerce and some others have been pushing for biweekly pay, and recently Rep. SERPA put in a bill to provide for biweekly pay for private sector workers. Were you at the bill hearing in the House Labor Committee when it was heard recently?
I was there last year for it. This year I was tied up with the Finance Committee, but I do remember when it came in last year, and Chamber of Commerce came in and they testified in favor of the bill. Excuse me, the Chamber of Commerce did testify in favor of the bill, and it was an extensive hearing that day on the bill.
Mm-hmm. What kind of arguments were the Chamber and the business folks putting forward on why the state should go for biweekly pay for these private sector workers?
Yeah, their basic argument is that it would save businesses money in the form of bookkeeping and CPAs and whatnot by doing it bi-weekly. It may be so. They may be correct. But I think that isn't as important as a person receiving their check every week, especially in this economy. This is the worst economy we've had since the last Great Depression. And the average person needs money every week, the average working person. And there are bills that you just can't pay every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, such as fuel for your vehicle, fuel to get you to work. You have to pay that every week. Food to put on the table, you have to pay that every week. And if we were to go to a bi-weekly system, so many people would go without, or at least have to cut back on that.
I know that there were some worker representatives who testified on the bill. Did organized labor oppose this biweekly pay legislation?
It seems that most of organized labor did oppose this biweekly legislation. Yes, they did. And I think they see what's actually happening, the reality of it. Once again, people have to have their money on a weekly basis. And I know there are people who don't have the money on the weekly basis. It's already taken place in a segment of the work population. But I would think we would just be regressing, especially in this time, bad economic time right now, if we did that.
Yeah. I know one of the bigger problems with going to biweekly pay is that if you have a business shut down or a plant close, then people could be out 2 weeks of pay instead of 1 week of pay. And unfortunately, with our bankruptcy laws, workers are at the bottom of the totem pole. They're not at the top of the totem pole in terms of getting money from a failed business or corporation.
Sure, they could be out the 2 weeks of pay, and on top of that, if they worked any overtime in that 2 week period, they would also be without that.
Mm-hmm. Do you sense a stronger push this year than last year or the year before on the Chamber's part to get biweekly pay through this session?
I don't think so. I think it's about the same, and I would hope that we could repeal that and hold them back on that. I respect their opinion, but I just can't agree with it. No.
Another issue that is a hot topic of conversation, has been for the last couple of years, relates to teacher collective bargaining. And I'm going to want to talk about both evergreen clauses as well as binding arbitration. But let's start with the evergreen clause. Some people call it contract continuation. I think they call it evergreen because it stands for the idea that once a contract is expired, the contract stays alive. It stays green until a new contract is put in place. You're working on legislation for an evergreen clause for teacher collective bargaining, aren't you?
Yes, that's correct, I am.
And legislation has been introduced, and you've got some co-sponsors on it already?
Yes, actually, the legislation will be introduced today, but I do have co-sponsors on it.
Okay. So I imagine it's a pretty simple bill from the versions that have been put in the past. It's just a short couple of sentences about contracts continuing until a new one is put into place. Why do you think this is an important bill for this Assembly to consider?
Well, the continuing contract, and I actually don't like the name, the continuing contract. I like the evergreen clause better, or as I call it, just the contract extension. When we say continuing contract, I think that actually has helped to bring up the negative connotation to people who have never been involved in contract negotiations. And I can understand, but they have not been involved, and they don't understand. The continuing contract theme makes people think that it goes on for infinity, you know, like space. It just goes on for infinity, and we know it doesn't. All it does, it gives us the continuation of guidelines to follow, rules and guidelines to follow while we're working on another contract. It benefits, of course, it benefits the labor movement, but it also benefits management. It keeps coercion, and it keeps everybody on the straight path, and we just follow the same rules and regulations while we're contracting. Once again, it doesn't hurt anyone. It doesn't give people continuous raises. There are no financial benefits to it, but it puts people at ease when they know what they have to do, and it stops havoc in the workplace. Happy workers always continue to work hard, and that's what it does.
I imagine for workers living in an age of inflation wouldn't want to go 10 years without a pay raise, and I don't see how continuing contract or contract extensions in the long run benefit working people.
No, in the long run it does not. All it is a temporary, very key word, temporary extension. And I don't believe that there's any labor movement that wants that long period of time that you're negotiating a contract. We want to end it as soon as possible and keep people on an even keel and keep them at peace of mind, and we know where we're going to be. The worst thing is uncertainty in the workplace.
One thing that I observed when I was lobbying for my union, the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, on this issue, was that we've always had a rule or an understanding that contract extensions was the law of the land. There had been a pretty high-profile teacher contract dispute in Warwick in the early 90s, and there was a question once that contract expired as to what happens once it expired and a new one wasn't put in place, particularly after striking teachers were forced to go back to work. And the issue actually went to the State Labor Relations Board, which ruled that the terms and conditions of employment, the contract did in fact continue until a new one is negotiated. So for decades, public school teachers and school committees had this common understanding that contracts continued until a new one was put in place.
Great, and I believe that's the way it should be. It's common sense. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's common sense, and it's great for the workplace. And I would believe that management and unions and organized labor would love to have it. I can't understand why management does not want it.
Yeah. I imagine as far as the general public, and in particular the parents are concerned, continuing contract would be a real benefit just because it would provide some stability.
Absolutely. Once again, ease of mind, peace of mind, that's what people want.
So do you expect a hearing coming up in the near future on this issue?
I will be requesting a hearing. As soon as it goes in, I will be requesting a hearing and consideration on the bill. I would assume it will come up within the next 2 weeks, and I'm sure it will be a lengthy hearing on the bill, absolutely.
And depending on our taping and viewing schedule, this could actually be shown after that hearing, but that's what happens in TV sometimes. The hearing process, could you just give us a little bit of a flavor on what it's like in the House Labor Committee, for example, when someone would go in and hear a bill? And what if someone wanted to testify on a bill? Give our viewers a sense on what the hearing process is in the State House.
Sure. The hearing process is open to the general public. Anybody can come in, anybody can testify. And the more people that testify, the more I like it, to tell you the truth, because we are a fact-finding body. I don't believe that there is any representative that knows all of the issues on any of the bills that come in. So we're always happy to see people come in and testify. Our chairwoman Anastasia Williams from Providence, my co-chair of the Providence delegation. She does a fantastic job, and it's a very simple process. You come in, there's a ledger there to sign in, and just tell us if you're pro or con on the bill, and you receive, depending on how many people there, you can receive anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to testify on the bill. Most bills are held for further study. There's always been controversy on that.
What does that mean, holding a bill for further study?
That the bill will not be voted on that day, and that it can be brought back at a later date to be voted on by the committee members themselves. And I, in fact, agree with that. I know there is a faction at the State House that does not agree with that. They would like to see votes take place on the day that the bill is heard. But once again, I don't believe that any of us fully understand a bill until we've heard everybody testify on it, pro and con. And then I myself, I like to do research on a bill after I've been at a hearing and I've heard both sides of it. I like to do my own research. And so I think holding a bill for further study is actually better. It gives you more time to actually learn about the bill.
I know from my experience in the State House that many bills that do pass often pass in an amended form, or as we call it, a sub-A. And that really wouldn't be possible if you were voting bills up or down the day of the hearing. Isn't that true?
You're absolutely correct. As you say, a sub-A, it's been an amended bill. It takes place as you learn more of the facts and you do an investigation on it. And quite often the sponsor may have overlooked something, may have looked an aspect of it, and by him or her, the representative or senator, staying at the hearing and listening to the other people come in and testify, they understand that there's a problem with the bill, or there's a way that they can better the bill itself. So they will, at a later date, sub-A it, which is an amendment, and it makes it a better bill. And then, after holding for further study, we now can vote on it in a better form.
One thing that's different in the House Labor Committee this year compared to last year is where the hearings are being held, and I have to commend your chair, Anastasia Williams, for having some appropriate accommodations for the Labor Committee. What was it like to hear a bill in the old room, which probably only accommodated 15 or 16 people.
Absolutely. She did a great job with that. She pushed for another room, and she did a great job with that. The other room was small. As you know, it wasn't much bigger than a telephone booth. It was it was stuffy. It did get on people's personalities sometimes, let's say that. But to be in the larger room where we have larger windows, and it's much easier to conduct business. I think everybody's happy with the situation.
Yeah, and the House Lounge is very spacious, and it certainly accommodated every crowd for every hearing you've had this year.
Absolutely, and the good part about it also is transparency. It's much larger, and if we want to tape it, it makes it that much easier to do taping and let people see what is actually taking place in the Labor Committee.
That's terrific. Let's turn our attention to the other labor relations issue I wanted to talk about today, and that's binding arbitration for teacher contract disputes. And let me start with a quick explanation on the legislation that the AFT and the NEA have been working on. But I really want to hear from you, because I know you have some firsthand experience on binding arbitration. By way of explanation, we already have binding arbitration for teacher contracts, just like we do for municipal workers. What is in our law is binding arbitration, where an arbitrator, a neutral, would hear the case from the union side, would hear the case from management side, and then make a decision on what contract provision should be in place. This is different than grievance arbitration, where it's just an issue of discipline or something
Correct.
like that. This is when you're negotiating a new contract. Now, under the teacher law, currently, you can't have the arbitrator make a decision on financial matters. So issues such as salary or health benefits, the arbitrator can make a recommendation, but it's not binding. And what the AFT and the NEA have been working on is legislation that would not create binding arbitration, but really just expand the existing teacher binding arbitration to include financial issues as well as the non-financial issues that's already covered. I know there had been some issues about who the arbitrator was, and I'm interested in hearing about your experiences, but there's a draft legislation that would speak to having retired Rhode Island justices be arbitrators. There was questions about what standards an arbitrator would use, because people want to make sure that the taxpayers' interests are considered by the arbitrator. And the draft legislation actually puts right in there that the arbitrator has to consider the community's ability to pay in the interest of students and taxpayers in issuing the award. So that's what the teacher binding arbitration bill is setting out to do, and will be considered this year in the Rhode Island General Assembly. But you were a police officer for a period of time. How long were you in the Providence Police Department?
I was on the Providence Police Department for 22 years, rank of sergeant, patrol sergeant. Previous to that, I did 3 years as a narcotics investigator. My last 10 years on the job, when I was a part of management as a patrol sergeant, I was also the vice president for 4 years of the Providence FOP, and I was on the contract negotiation team and on the grievance committee also.
So you have some experience with negotiating in the public sector as a police officer.
That's correct, absolutely.
Yeah. How many contracts did you negotiate?
We negotiated 2 contracts, 4 years. And we did go to binding arbitration the first time. And you know, I know there are a lot of misconceptions about binding arbitration, but binding arbitration is not a problem, it's a solution to a problem. It's inevitable in these days that we're going to have conflict with contracts. And if we can set up protocol for a resolution before the conflicts actually happen, then we can minimize the impact on the taxpayers and hopefully on the relationship between management and workers. And that's what arbitration does. Once again, it's a solution to a problem.
Now, the arbitration law that covers policemen as well as firemen in Rhode Island allows for the arbitrator to make a ruling on money issues as well as rights and benefits. Is that correct?
That's correct. Financial issues and medical coverage is also included on what the arbitrator can in fact rule on.
Yeah, so fair to say that what the teachers and school support staff are looking for is something that police and fire already have here in Rhode Island.
We've had that for many years. We've really had that for many years, and it works quite well. The years that we contracted, and as you would know, as we went to the arbitrator, as you know, an arbitrator can only rule on 1 year, contract for 1 year, but nothing stops them from ruling for 2 consecutive one-year contracts or 3 consecutive one-year contracts. But we always did quite well with an arbitrator. And when I say we did quite well, it was fair. The first year, we thought we came ahead. We thought we did quite well. The second year, it was sort of neutral. The third year, our membership thought we lost, and management thought they did quite well. But as the saying goes, if you both walk away and you feel that neither of you have really succeeded, then it's fair. And that's what it was. The arbitrator was quite fair. There are a lot of misconceptions, you know, and I see 3 major misconceptions all the time about arbitration, and I just don't know how these misconceptions have come out.
Yeah, what kind of misconceptions are you hearing, and what's the response to it?
Well, you know, you hear people say, and once again, I don't blame people who've never been involved in contracts. You know, these rumors are put out by people that do not support arbitration. But once again, I believe they're incorrect. You hear one is that arbitrators tend to rule in favor of organized labor because organized labor pays the bill. That, you know, an arbitrator, of course, gets monetary compensation, and if they don't rule in favor of organized labor, then they'll be out of work, and they have to rule in favor of organized labor. But in reality, the management side of it can always file for arbitration also. So it nullifies that theory right there.
And it's also true that labor and management split the costs.
Absolutely, they split the cost, absolutely. Another theory we hear is that organized labor, you know, we have our tentacles out like an octopus, and that we know all of the arbitrators, and so they're going to favor us. Well, first of all, that's an insult to the arbitrators, because they're all, from what I've seen, they're all very professional people. Secondly, when we did it, we went through AAA, the American Arbitration Association, and they pick, and they're a nationwide association, very professional, and they pick the arbitrator on a rotating basis. And when we had our arbitration, the arbitrator was from Worcester, Massachusetts. He wasn't even a Rhode Islander. We had no contacts to him, but he was very fair. So that's nullified too. That's incorrect. Also, people like to say that the arbitration process favors organized labor because organized labor has all the money. They have an infinite amount of money to hire high-priced attorneys to fight for them. Actually, it's just the opposite. Our union dues not only cover our attorneys for arbitration, they cover attorneys for grievance processes, they cover our rental fees for an office for our union membership, they cover utilities, they cover, you know, we can go on, and donations, the charitable donations that we make throughout the community every year, hundreds and hundreds, actually thousands of dollars in charity. By contrast, the city, and I'll give you an example, the city of Providence, when we were negotiating, had approximately 15 full-time attorneys in the city solicitor's office, all getting paid quite well. But over a 4-year span, they still went out and spent over $2 million on outside attorneys. So it's actually the management, it's the municipalities that have the money, the infinite amount of money. How do they pay? They pay through taxpayers' dollars. So they just figure it into the next budget, and if they have to, they raise the taxpayers' taxes. So it's actually just the opposite. It's not the unions that have the infinite amount of money and can afford the high-priced attorneys.
I know in the teacher world, you know, most teacher contracts on the teacher side is negotiated by a field rep. They don't even bring in a lawyer to represent them. I'm not a lawyer, and I do plenty of teacher contracts, but the person sitting on the other side of the table from me representing school committees is always a lawyer, and that's just the tradition that's developed here in Rhode Island, at least in the teacher world.
Yes, it is. It's sad that those misconceptions have been thrown out there, and so many people believe them. You know, arbitration, there are a lot of benefits to it. It saves the taxpayer dollars, because when you get to that critical mass, that impasse where you're just not going to be able to agree, why prolong it? Because it only runs up a bill on the taxpayers. Let's go to arbitration. Let's finish it as soon as possible, and it saves the taxpayers dollars. Once again, it's also good for the morale of the worker. The morale doesn't like uncertainty. They like to know that there's an end in sight. When you file for arbitration, they know within the next 2 to 3 months, it's over, they'll have their contract. And 3, it also helps the municipalities with their budgets. The sooner you settle it, the sooner they can figure their budget out.
you negotiate before you go to arbitration. Could you give us a flavor on how that went in the couple of contracts that you worked on? You know, how long did you negotiate before you failed to reach agreement and then triggered the arbitration process?
Sure. We had negotiated for about 4 months before on the first contract, about 4 months beforehand. Mm-hmm. When we took office, actually, we had a whole slate takeover. We won a new slate, all 5 of us won. And we came in the latter part of October. By the time we were set up, it was the middle of November. And we went right to negotiations. Unfortunately, we were already 4 or 5 months into a contract without a contract, of course. We were working on the continuing contract that we have with the police department. We negotiated for about another 3 months, and we tried to meet on a weekly basis, and we hit an impasse.
What were the big issues, do you recall?
Well, at the time, the city wanted to take us away from the health insurance company that we have and put us on another health insurance company. Mm-hmm. We didn't mind that as long as it was a comparable plan, but it was not a comparable plan. They also wanted to take away seniority rights. They wanted to take away minimum manning. And they wanted to increase our copay on our medical coverage. Mm-hmm. We offered to finalize the year that we were already in, just keep everything status quo. We didn't want to raise, we wanted nothing. Just sign off on it, give us a 2-year contract, no raise the first year, and a raise, small raise in the second year, and we would add to the copay on the prescription drug plan, and they wouldn't agree to it. So we finally hit the impasse, and we filed for arbitration.
Okay. And how many times did each side meet with the arbitrator before the arbitrator finished the hearing process and issued an award?
I want to say we met with the arbitrator approximately 4 times, possibly 5 times. And then after that, there was I believe, a 60-day window of opportunity for the arbitrator to come out with his verdict. But also, before we hit the arbitration, people don't realize that once you file out for arbitration, it doesn't mean that your contract negotiations are cut off. You can still continue to negotiate. Mm-hmm. And we tried to negotiate with the city at the time. Unfortunately, we hit an impasse on that.
Right. So the arbitration award came out fairly quickly, at least compared to having it drag on for half a year or a year without any resolution, right?
Absolutely. It took us maybe a month to actually do the negotiations, and then within 60 days, the verdict was out. So it was within a 3-month period, as opposed to going on 6 months to another year.
Yeah. And in your tenure on the union negotiating committee, you had another contract that went to arbitration as well?
The contract, we had filed for arbitration on it, but as I said, we could continue to negotiate. People don't realize that you can negotiate, and before we went to arbitration, we did reach an agreement.
Okay. So in both cases, it was a fairly expeditious process, wasn't it?
It was, and the only reason that it was expeditious was because of arbitration. Once the arbitration was filed, it moved along quite quickly.
So if a question is posed to you, should Rhode Island enact a binding arbitration statute for teachers and school employees? What do you say?
I am 100% sure that they should. It's great for labor, but more importantly, and just as important, it's great for the taxpayer. It saves the taxpayer money, and it keeps the kids in school. Children will not miss school, and there will be no animosity between either side.
Okay. Representative, I certainly appreciate you being so generous of your time and giving us a real inside view on how binding arbitration really works. Thank you very much for coming out.
James, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
Okay. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Labor Vision.
Our next speaker is actually going to be the general manager here of the Westin Hotel, Mr. Mark Brown.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I echo the mayor's remarks, and on behalf of the Westin management and its owners, the Prakashanti Group, we are pleased to announce that the Westin Providence and its associates have finalized a new 3-year contract. And the labor dispute here at the Westin Providence is officially over. Thank you. Although we do not plan to share details of the new contract, the new agreement in this forum, I can say with complete confidence that the new contract enables many of the cost savings provisions hotel management had been seeking, while also providing job security and fair compensation for our associates. This new agreement is a model that demonstrates how two parties can acknowledge the economic differences and challenges that facing this city, the state, and the country. And we can work together in the spirit of cooperation and respect to arrive at a mutually beneficial solution. Throughout the entire process, which was at times very public and seemingly contentious, the associates here at the Westin maintained outstanding guest relations and continued to provide the highest levels of guest service. And for that, I thank each and every one of them for their professionalism and for recognizing that we are all here with a singular purpose to provide visitors to our capital city with the finest guest service available. Moving forward, the Westin Providence and its associates will continue to maintain the highest standards of service, excellence, and will remain committed to earning our reputation as the state's flagship hotel. Thank you. Congratulations to everyone.
I believe Council President Michael Solomon would like to make a few remarks.
May have 4 years of Spanish. The only thing I remember was no hablo español. So I'm going to have Councilwoman Sabina Matos translate for me.
Council, right?
I want to acknowledge the Deputy Majority Leader Nick Narducci, Councilman Miguel Luna, Councilman Kevin Jackson, Councilman Luis Aponte, Councilman Davian Sanchez, and Councilwoman Sabina Matos. I've been connected to this difficult dispute since it began nearly two years ago.
Yo he estado conectado a esta lucha desde que empezó 2 años atrás.
I was happy to provide my assistance, but I'm grateful to all of those who helped settle this dispute.
Yo estaba muy feliz de poder ayudar, pero estoy también más agradecido de todos los que colaboraron para esta lucha.
This is a historic agreement that moves Providence forward and ensures that these jobs put employees on the path to the middle class.
Este es un acuerdo histórico que asegura que los empleados de la ciudad de Providence se puedan mover hacia adelante en una clase de trabajadora mediana.
And I want to recognize the workers for their perseverance, and especially those that served on the committee. Everyone has worked tirelessly over the past few years.
Y quiero reconocer a los trabajadores que estuvieron luchando, especialmente a los que estuvieron en el comité de negociación.
And I'd like to recognize the hotel and its management for negotiating this new agreement, and it's great to be back at the Westin.
Y quiero también reconocer al hotel y a los managers de la gerencia del hotel por el acuerdo, y es maravilloso estar de regreso en el Westin.
And I just want to announce we had a latecomer, Councilman Brian Principe.
Le da la bienvenida al councilman Brian Principe, que acaba de llegar.
Thank you.
Gracias.
I think it's also, I hope this is appropriate, Councilman, important to note that the Westin Hotel is in Councilman Principe's ward. So it's especially important that, we're especially glad you're here. Next, Carmen Castillo will be speaking for the workers.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Carmen Castillo, ya ella lo dijo. Yo me siento muy orgullosa esta noche de estar aquí y ser parte de este comité.
So my name is Carmen Castillo, as Jenna already said. I'm very proud to be here tonight and part of this committee.
También estoy muy orgullosa de mis trabajadores por soportar una lucha tan fuerte como fue esa de 2 años ahí afuera gritando.
I'm also very proud of the workers here who supported this fight for 2 long, hard years.
Y quiero darle un saludo muy especial a mi hija, Saimi Ciprián, que fue una persona que siempre estuvo conmigo.
And I also want to recognize my daughter, Saimi Ciprián, who is a great support for me, always there with me.
Quiero anunciar para todo que esta noche es una noche de historia para housekeeping porque para nosotros va a ser un alivio increíble tener menos trabajo mañana.
And I want to note that this is especially a historic night for the housekeeping department to know that we'll come to work tomorrow with much less work.
También, quiero decirle que esto no se queda aquí, que nuestra próxima victoria va a ser tener un contrato en el Hotel Renacer. Gracias.
Wait, no, you have to let me translate it first. And so I want to announce there are workers here from the Renaissance Hotel, and I want everyone to know that our next victory will be a first contract at the Renaissance Hotel.
También le quiero dar las gracias a una organizadora que venía siempre de Boston a ayudarnos a nosotros en nuestra lucha y que está aquí esta noche con nosotros, de ella. Gracias por todo.
And I also want to thank Deja Garcia, who's an organizer with our union in Boston, who has been here to support us throughout the fight. So I believe Aubrey Ramsey is next.
Aubrey!
What?
So my name is Aubrey Ramsey, and about 3 years ago I started at this hotel and never expected to be here today. I put my career aside to fight for justice. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in this contract. There's no tears today. And I really feel like this is a victory and that we fought hard to get this contract. And this means that my twin sister and I can finally come back to work, hopefully relieving us of some of our economic stress. And I'm excited to help my friends out in room service at the Renaissance Hotel there and give them justice just as like I got today here at Westin Hotel. So everybody wants to know, some of the details of the contract, and we're not going to give out all the details, but some of the key points are that this is an extraordinary contract that does give job security to myself and my coworkers, which is very important. Better job security than we've had before, and I need that. I need to know that I'm walking back into this hotel and that my job's going to be guaranteed. It also restores the economic language in our contract over 2 years, which is great for the workers. We've fought for that. It also gives us, a combination of about $275,000 in back pay for the violations of our federal rights. It reverses subcontracting in 4 departments and rehires the workers in room service, in bell, in laundry, and in some of the other places. So that is some of the details.
And last, but certainly not least, Chris Cook, who is not only a member of the committee, but also a vice president of Local 217.
So I just wanted to say thanks to the council members and to the mayor for coming out tonight, and George Nee coming tonight and helping us out. I really appreciate it, so thank you guys for coming. I just wanted to say thanks for everybody for pitching in and staying and being persistent in helping us to get this contract back, so I wanted to thank everybody. I wanted to announce today that as of today, on behalf of Local 217, the boycott is coming to an end here at the Westin Hotel in Providence. So again, thank you everybody, and I'll see you guys out there in a little bit. Thank you.
We're going to end the official part of the press conference now, but certainly folks will be sticking around to answer any individual questions that anyone may have. Thank you everyone for coming. Si se puede.
Well, I'm extremely emotional. As you can see, I got choked up twice. I didn't expect that. There's been a lot of tears in this contract. You know, either getting really frustrated with what management was offered, feeling like we deserved more, and feeling like, you know, a little defeated in the fight because it was such a long process. But I really feel like the tears today, you know, and being emotional today was about being victorious and really, you know, having triumph to make it through the 2-year contract. So I'm excited to work back with my coworkers. I miss them. The workers that are here, you know, they've been really supportive and they're ready to welcome us back with open arms. So I'm excited.
So the main issues were job security, health care, and pensions, right?
So there's a couple more. So the main issues that we've resolved in this, which is big for me, is job security. There's a lot more language than we had before that protects our jobs. There's a total ban on subcontracting for the duration of the contract, which we never had before. It also gives us a lot more protection with our federal rights. And I really feel before the 3 years I worked here that I never had, you know, a guaranteed job. And as of today, I feel like my job is more guaranteed than, let's say, 2 years ago. Some of the other important things is that, you know, all the economics will be restored in 2 years, and we'll get our wages back fully restored, our health insurance, you know, that coming back, as well as, you know, some back pay coming back, and totaling $275,000. No, that wasn't by the NLRB. It was actually negotiating between us as well as the company and coming to that agreement. I think the pressure of being involved in, you know, the NLRB definitely encouraged that there should be some, you know, retribution for the employees. I think everything had an effect. I think the reason why we have a victory today is that, you know, the workers were definitely persistent in the fight, and we didn't focus on one area of just the boycott or just the actions outside. You know, we really got the community involved and made sure that they understood that this was their fight as well. You know, we got legislation passed through the city council and got huge support from them. So we definitely used all the angles. We used the, you know, our legal angle by, you know, pursuing with the unfair labor practices. Back when they fired in November Mike Jose and Al to start off our boycott, actually, is one of the reasons, is because they violated our federal rights. So a combination of everything has brought us to this point today.
Well, I have to say congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really happy.
I appreciate it.
I think
this
it's
is awesome.
terrific.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's awesome. And thanks. I mean, you guys have covered it from day one.
Thank you for joining us for this evening's edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week here on Channel 14. Join us on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m. For nearly 30 years, the Institute for Labor Studies and Research has been growing unions and building futures. Since it first opened its doors on 15 Jefferson Street near the State House, the Institute has offered education and training programs to more than 125,000 working Rhode Islanders. In a rapidly changing economy, employers need a workforce that's able to adapt to change. The Institute is committed to offering programs that provide our students with the skills to meet the demands of this new economy. Our programs range from Worksite English as a second language and GED classes, Worksite Spanish, targeted to more than 22 specific industries and professions, customized computer training ranging from beginner to advanced, national certification preparation classes in water distribution, and a host of other offerings designed to make program participants more effective at their jobs.
We were one of the first in Rhode Island, probably over 22 years or thereabouts. We had a number of nursing homes that it really made a difference in the lives of the workers in places where Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking workers were able to pick up English as a second language.
Becoming proficient in English is going to help them progress in the union, in life in general.
It was the institute that we turned to teach our teachers how to speak conversational Spanish so that our teachers could communicate with the parents of our children.
3 decades has been working hand over fist to try and bring education and knowledge to ordinary working people, regardless of where they work.
To be able to do it at work takes a great burden off people, and the Institute provided the classes, provided wonderful teachers that understood where people were coming from.
Absolutely incredible the way she worked with the students. And she geared the whole curriculum around health and safety. Not only general health and safety, but she also took part of my curriculum that they need to have. We have to have 144 hours a year, and she utilized that and made it part of her curriculum.
Most recently, we have announced our partnership with the National Labor College in Silver Spring, Maryland, and the establishment here at the Institute of the Edward J. McElroy Satellite of the National Labor College to service members of organized labor throughout New England.
We can accredit apprenticeship training and couple those experiences and courses done in labor education.
Be able to actually have our kids go through school and actually qualify with our credits we get for the apprentice program.
So individuals now here in Rhode Island can get a bachelor's degree in labor studies right here in Rhode Island at the Institute.
I see people going on from simply taking a course here to going to the community college to get maybe a 4-year bachelor's degree while they're still working. And every once in a while, somebody comes down to URI and gets a master's degree in labor and industrial relations. That's what the labor movement's about, moving people up and forward.
The Institute has always considered education of union stewards and labor leaders to be one of its primary functions, and as such, has created an extensive list of course offerings such as basic and advanced steward training, labor relations and employment law, lobbying and political action, effective communication, negotiations and grievance training, and workplace health and safety.
I was fortunate enough to take some Spanish classes there, along with some postal workers. There were some laborers there, some teachers, and that was very helpful for my training in organizing.
The Institute has provided customized training for us for our building delegates who are known as shop stewards out there in the other world.
The benefit of having relationships with the unionized construction industry because of our substantial investments in things such as apprenticeship and training.
They need it for personal development, but more importantly, if the labor movement is to regain its vitality and to regain its strength, we need a level playing field.
We're very excited about our own Union Steward Seminar, which is coming up in a couple of months, and the Institute for Labor Studies is going to put the training on for us. That's one of the things that they do. They're always here to help labor.
Our Leadership for a Future program provides a leadership training environment for emerging and established leaders from community groups, labor unions, and religious community. Leadership for a Future also provides an opportunity for leaders from diverse groups and backgrounds to forge relationships and networks that will benefit themselves and their organizations through their lives.
What initially attracted me to the program was some of our leaders with the laborers. They had discussions with people at the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, and it was impressed upon me that this was a very important program, a new program that had a lot to offer, which happened to be the case.
When you look at Leadership for a Future, I mean, that says it all right there, is that, you know, in Rhode Island, we need leaders to step up to make us stronger in the future. And I wanted to learn how to be a part of that.
The leaders of the labor movement in Rhode Island are going to come from individuals who take courses in leadership and development here at the Institute.
If you want to learn from a group of faculty who will help you do the best you can and build all the skills you need to be a really effective community advocate, Leadership for a Future is the program for you.
The Institute for Labor Studies and Research has produced Labor Vision continuously since 1986. It is the only television show dedicated exclusively to covering issues that concern Rhode Islanders and their families. In addition to the regular coverage of a range of topics, Labor Vision each month chooses a current issue to explore in depth. Labor Vision interviews people on the street, on the job, and at conferences and meetings about the issues that matter to them. Each month, experts and community leaders come together to form a panel to discuss a timely issue.
In that program, we have interviews with people who are newsmakers in the labor community, maybe people who are sympathetic to ordinary working people, even if they're not in a union. We present rallies and demonstrations, discussions of important points of order.
And we're very grateful to have that opportunity to be able to reach out and let the world know what we think is important for their children and what's important for education.
It's our thing. It talks about us. It speaks truth to power. We're the stars in the TV shows that come on Labor Vision. And it talks about all the good work that the Institute cares about and the labor movement cares about.
Employee Free Choice Act. Everybody's standard of living improves.
Where people are actually compensated.
People can earn enough.
And not have to go through that fight and that intimidation and that fear.
The worst employer in the world.
Elvis Figueroa.
Fired. A Marshall Plan for the economy.
It requires a first contract. It requires mediation. If you can't reach a first contract within a year.
It'll help the labor movement.
It's going to inhibit a lot of these employers from saying, I'm just going to fire 3 guys and we can just stop this right here.
What this act is going to do is put the choice into the hands of the workers.
We could get Congress to pass this. This is the right thing. Let's do something right for once.
The Institute for Labor Studies and Research has trained more than 125,000 members of organized labor and working Rhode Islanders. We're very proud of that accomplishment, and we look to 125,000 more in the next 30 years.
Together, we'll build something that people 30 years from now will look back on and pay honor to as well.
It is very important that the Institute continue to thrive and to grow.
By building up the labor movement through these instrumentalities, we've been able to build these people into better citizens.
That's major in growing the union.
Which everyone knows nowadays is more important than ever. So, I mean, they've been a valuable resource.
It's a key instrument in strengthening the labor movement and revitalizing the labor movement.
So it's our responsibility not only to raise the resources, but to explain to people how this really sews together the fabric of a decent life for our members, for people who are not our members, for people generally in the state of Rhode Island.
When you support the Institute for Labor Studies, you support the labor movement in Rhode Island.